And we're back to another episode of Legacy Battle. I'm Michael Adams. My panelist tonight from Gridiron's Battle Zone, Brian King. Director of Operations for the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, Scott Crawford, and from Steelers Nation South, Rollo Cawthon. Our show tonight is baseball's greatest utility player, followed by a Q&A with our special guest, and we are joined by an 8-year MLB player. He has played with the Rangers, Red Sox, Rockies, and the Blue Jays, played all three outfield positions and every position in the infield but the pitcher and catcher. He ranks 55th all-time. That's all-time in baseball history in range factor per 9 innings at second base. He's a career 290 hitter. That's right, kids. Players used to hit above 250. So we want to welcome Jeff Frye. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Our honorable mentions tonight, guys who just missed our list: Mark Loretta, Martin Pareto, and we are going to start with Brian.
All right, so I got Craig Counsell. According to HS Baseball Web, a utility player in baseball is a player who could be trusted at several positions on the field, must have a solid bat, therefore giving his manager a nice amount of options when filling in the club's daily lineup. Craig Counsell definitely qualifies as a utility player, spending significant time at second base, third base, shortstop, even snuck out into the outfield on occasion. His fielding was very good. He is tied for 64th all-time in defensive WAR, with 4 separate seasons ranking in the top 10. And his bat was solid. He was a lifetime 255 hitter with a 686 on-base percentage. He had little speed, legging out 40 triples and swiping over 100 bases. Counsell is best known for turning it up in the postseason. For the Marlins, 1997, he had a 2-out pinch hit RBI against the Giants in the NLDS. In the NLCS versus Atlanta, he chased the great Tom Glavine with an RBI in Game 6. And in Game 7 of the World Series versus Cleveland, he knocked in the game-tying run in the bottom of the 9th and then scored the series-winning run in the 11th. Counsell wasn't done. 4 years later, he was added again as a member of the Diamondbacks in Game 3 of the NLDS versus the Cards, a 3-run home run blast, which ultimately was the game winner. Game 4 of the NLCS versus Atlanta, he chased Greg Maddux with a 2 RBI double and then added 2 more RBIs later and ended up being named the NLCS MVP. And then he started off in Game 1 of the World Series with a homer off of Yankees ace Mike Mussina, helping the Arizona to their first and only World Championship. Reliable fielding, solid hitting, some speed on the base paths, and big-time clutch factor in a postseason. Craig Counsell definitely checks all the boxes for an all-time great utility player.
Jeff, I come to you. Craig Counsell, his career was basically over, and he changed the batting stance to one of the most unique stances in history. What were your thoughts on the way he would hit that ball and his thoughts overall?
Well, I mean, he was a good player. I know as a someone who played against him, we were all pretty annoyed by his batting stance. We didn't really, we didn't really understand. We'd never seen anybody do this crazy stuff that he was doing, but he got the job done, man. And I do remember him being a very good defensive player, especially up the middle. He was very solid, and I do remember a lot of highlights of him, really doing well in the postseason, and that's really what matters.
Postseason for sure. Did you feel that he might have been better at one position than another?
I think his best position was shortstop, from what I remember. He just seemed like he was just a solid, and it's so much harder to play shortstop than second base. And a lot of people probably don't realize that. You have less time. That's the reason I couldn't play shortstop really was because I didn't have a strong arm. And so when you don't have a strong arm, you're kind of rushing yourself, and sometimes you force yourself to make mistakes because you're in too much of a hurry trying to get a little bit more on the throw, but he didn't have that problem.
Well, let's go to our oldest player tonight. Go ahead, Scott.
All right, we got Tony Phillips. Remember him he was a first-round draft pick in 1978. And out of all the guys on this list, he played the longest. He played 18 years, over 2,100 games, over 2,000 hits. His OPS plus was over 100. His WAR was over 50, and his D-WAR was positive as well. So Phillips, he mostly played outfield and second base, which shows total utility, playing basically half his games in the outfield and the other half in the infield. So he wasn't just sort of 3/4 one place and a quarter the other place. Of course, he won the World Series with Oakland in '89. He scored 100 runs 4 times. He led the AL in walks twice. And upon his a unique thing I found about it, upon his retirement, he played the most games in baseball history without making the All-Star game. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it's kind of a unique fact. And he was still playing professional baseball at age 52. Not, of course, in the big leagues, but in the North American League. So he was still active. Of course, he's passed away now, but Tony is, with all the games he played at all the different positions and doing it for 18 years in the big leagues is pretty darn impressive.
So 18 years in the big leagues, and then Jeff, he goes to play in the independent leagues after that. Some guys just can't give up the game, but he's our only power hitter tonight. What are your thoughts on Tony?
Man, he was a gamer. The guy could do it all. He was a pest. He could draw a lot of walks. I think he almost walked as many times as he struck out. He got on base. He was every at bat was a tough at bat with him. He could play anywhere on the field. What I remember most about him is that he was very cocky, and he talked a lot. He talked a lot of smack, and not many guys did that, but he did. But here's when I played against him, I was a younger guy, and here's this veteran who's talking a lot of smack, and you just had to take it, man, because this guy could back it up. And I know it was anytime he was on the other team, I knew there was going to be a battle, because he's just the gamer, one of those guys that grinded at bats, and very tough competitor, great player.
We're going to move to Rollo, and I know you got to run afterwards, Rollo, but who are you bringing us?
I got Figgy, Sean Figgins, born in Georgia, but grew up in the beautiful city of Brandon, Florida, where I'm sitting right now. He was drafted in the 4th round of the '97 draft by the Colorado Rockies, but he was traded in 2001 to the Anaheim Angels, where he would make his name. He made his major league debut as a pinch runner versus the Red Sox in August 2002, scoring his first run in that debut. He would get his first start at second base versus the Rangers, going 1 for 4, driving a run and scoring a run. In 2003, he would play in 71 games, playing 5 different positions, batting .296 and swiping 13 bases. But 2004, he would appear in 148 games, batting .296, stealing 34 bases and knocking in 60 runs. But his versatility would really shine through, playing second base, third base, shortstop, center field, and right field. And in 35 games, he would play at least 2 positions in 35 of those games. His breakout season was 2005, when he's moved to lead off for the Angels, where he would lead the league in steals with 62, which is still second in Angels history. He was also named co-MVP with Bartolo Colon. He would make his first All-Star game in 2009, when he finished with a league-high 101 walks, 42 stolen bases. He was also 10th in MVP voting that year, while playing all 3 outfield positions, along with third base, second base, and shortstop. He would go on to play for the Mariners, Marlins, Dodgers before retiring in 2016. The definition of versatility, he played all the positions outside of pitcher, catcher, and first base. He's the Angels' all-time leader in steals, 8th all-time in Angels history in runs, and 3rd all-time in triples. That's Figgy.
Jeff, Figgy, like you said, played all over. He might be like, I would just a little bit the least known name we're talking about here tonight. He's not household like Counsell and the guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and Phillips in the 80s there. But what are your thoughts on Figgy?
No, I remember Figgy. I just missed him. I think I retired the year before he came in. And I remember this guy being just like lightning quick, and not a big guy either, but great at bat. Seemed like he hit for a high average every year, was all over the field. He was, as not Gaetti would say, he was a problem for the opposing team. He puts pressure on the team. And when you have, I know Scioscia had to love, I'm pretty sure Scioscia was there at the time, but having a guy like that you can plug in anywhere in the lineup, anywhere on the field, is such a huge advantage. And I just remember the guy being a really good player.
So something a lot of these guys have in common is that they all have speed. We look at their stolen bases total. Is that helping them? Obviously, it helps them in the outfield track down balls, but does that make them more prone to be someone that's going to be chosen to play 10 different positions?
I don't know. I think if you look at the utility players, most of them are athletic guys. You have to be pretty athletic to play all over the field. A lot of them, Figgy wasn't that big. Council wasn't that big. Tony wasn't that big. I mean, Zobrist was the biggest of all those guys, and he really wasn't that big of a guy. But they're really the smaller guys who are very athletic, very agile, that can move all over the field, and usually those guys are pretty fast.
Well, we're going to move to our final player tonight, and he just mentioned him. That is Ben Zobrist, Zorilla, as nicknamed by Madden down here in Tampa. So I like to call him like the missing link, the Swiss Army knife, because he can just fill up any hole. Played with Tampa, Oakland, Kansas City, and the Chicago Cubs. And if you wanted to be successful in the World Series or make it there, this was the guy you called. He was a key player in helping 3 teams to the World Series and 2 winning it. Obviously, in 2016, he is the MVP of the World Series. He hit in the extra run there in the 10th inning, the go-ahead run, and helped them win that World Series, breaking the Billy Goat curse, if you believe in curses or whatever. And then the season before that, he had won the World Series in Kansas City, and he was clutch throughout that entire playoff run. But he has played every position except for catcher, and he pitched. So he's the only guy who got to pitch here tonight for the Cubbies. 3-time All-Star, switch hitter, so there's more versatility right there. He can hit from either side of the plate. You don't have to just play him against a certain-handed pitcher. Let's see. At that 2015 World Series that I mentioned earlier, he hit 303, 6 RBIs, and 2 homers in 5 games. He could have got MVP in my opinion, but so a utilities player's best stats for me are flexibility and availability. Ben never had an extended injury, and he would play anywhere you needed him to any night, and he never complained about it. He was just a good all-around guy. He wasn't a liability at the plate either, and he worked pitchers, 12.5% walk rate. That's pretty impressive. And on base, he was dangerous, 102 stolen bases. And he was successful 74% of the time swiping those bags. So you didn't have to worry about him in any aspect of the game. And just to break this down a little bit to show you some positioning here, he did over 4,200 innings at second base, over 2,700 innings in the outfield, and over 1,700 at shortstop. So he can play anywhere. He obviously played some third and first as well. But with above average fielding in any position that you put him in. The only one where they said he was maybe a little below average was at shortstop, but he came up as a second baseman, and Iwamura was stuck there for Tampa, so he had to wait for the injury, so he started out there in the outfield. But he's a great guy from everything I've heard. Jeff, I know you had a little story about him, and what are your thoughts on Ben as a player?
Yeah, Ben, I mean, had a great career, probably better than anybody expected, considering he signed as a senior sign out of Dallas Baptist University. And he was actually a shortstop in college. I guess they moved him to second base in the minor leagues, but I mean, he could do it all. I mean, very reliable guy, great team player, the kind of guy that, like I had mentioned with Sean Figgins, is what a luxury to have somebody that can do everything that he can do in your lineup. It's like the right fielder needs a day off. We'll just put Zobrist out there. Shortstop needs a day. We'll put Zobrist. We're putting him somewhere in the lineup just because he adds so much offensively, and that's just a huge luxury to have as a manager. Now, I met Ben Zobrist. I don't know what year he signed professionally, but it was like my first year as an agent, and I was going out to Dallas Baptist because I lived not too far from there. I heard about this kid named Ben Zobrist, so I started going out there and watching him. Got to meet him and, let him know that I was interested in representing him. And I was pretty new at being an agent. I didn't really understand that maybe I needed to close the deal right away and put pressure on him. So I didn't do that. And so Ben gets invited to a Mariners tryout camp. And I'm friends with the Mariners scout who's running the camp. So Ben calls me and says, "Hey, you think our first baseman can go to the tryout camp?" And I said, "Let me make a call." I called my buddy, the scout, and I said, "Hey, Zobrist wants to bring his first baseman to the tryout camp." He goes, "Okay." I called Ben back. Now I'm thinking, all right, I'm getting some brownie points here, right? I'm getting his teammate invited. So I said, "Yeah, you can bring your teammate." He goes, "All right, thanks." So I show up at the tryout camp. You know, I'm not really trying to interfere. I'm in the stands, whatever. He goes out and has a good day. And above the dugout, I'm standing above the dugout. He goes, "Hey, is there anything else we need to talk about?" I was like, he goes, "I'm going to talk to a couple more agents." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, and right then I like knew that I didn't close the deal right away. So as I'm leaving, I get a call from Bobby Witt, my teammate who works for Alan Nero at the time. He goes, "Hey, Frye Dad," he goes, "You ever heard of some kid named Ben Zobrist?" I was like, "Yeah, I've been going to his games for 2 months. 2 months." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, they called our agency. His dad or he called our agency in Chicago and he wants to meet with me, but I don't even know who he is." And he ends up signing with them, and his entire career is with that agency. So that was a tough lesson to learn, but I never rooted against Ben because I knew he was a good kid. I just kind of wish that I was the one who got to represent him.
Well, we'll see if you'll give him a vote here now. Let's move into our vote. Can't pick your own, guys. Scott, who you taking?
You convinced me on Zobrist.
So first, all right. Brian.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I love my guy Council, but I mean, Zobrist is like Council, and he took it like a step further. So I got to go Zobrist.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was actually thinking when you were talking about Craig Counsell, I remember Craig Counsell like in the regular season being like a good Ben Zobrist type player before Ben Zobrist, I guess. So
Right.
I love the way he batted, and he was just consistent. And he actually showed up in playoff games too. Like you didn't expect it. He was such a tiny guy. So I'll take Counsell. Jeff, we come to you. Who would you take?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Tony Phillips, man, just because I remember playing against this guy and I think he was underappreciated. I think it just so happens that, the time that he was playing, there was a lot of not really utility guys were making the all-star team. You kind of had to, there was a lot of guys that were locked in. I mean, if you're a second baseman, it's Roberto Alomar and Knobloch every year. If shortstop's Cal Ripken and, whoever else was the best at the time, Tejada or whatever. So I got to go with Tony Phillips just because I know from playing against him what a weapon he was.
Well, a win for Zobrist tonight, but I'm gonna give my first question to Scott, and then we'll go Brian, me.
All right, a couple questions here. What you played with a lot of great players, Hall of Fame type players, Larry Walker, Todd Helton, Pedro Martinez, Carlos Delgado, who should be in Cooperstown but isn't. What made those guys, when you played with them, what made those guys so great? And could you tell they were going to be the greatest of the great when you were playing with those guys?
I agree with Carlos. He got a raw deal, man. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Just look at his numbers. I don't even know how he got passed over. Hopefully, somewhere down the road he can get in. But I think probably the one trait every one of them had was confidence in themselves. They really believed in themselves. You could just tell the way they carried themselves. And I played with Larry Walker toward the end of his career, so I didn't get to see, and he was basically in the National League most of his career, so I didn't get to play against him, but I did get to see him play, just watching highlights, and what an incredible talent he was. He was the best base runner in the game. He was the best outfielder in the game, and he hit 360 every year. So, but all those guys were supremely confident. They worked really hard, and all of those guys were good teammates too.
Great. All right.
So, Jeff, during your career, especially during the early part, you laid down quite a few bunts. That's something I really appreciate. 11 sacrifice hits in just 67 games in 1992 is very impressive. So could you take us through the thought process once you got the bunt sign from the coach? Like what type of pitch you're looking for, where you're kind of hoping to place the ball, like that type of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. My rookie year, every time somebody got on first, I had to bunt. It seemed like. I think it was more Toby Harrah testing me.
Okay.
I was like not a power hitter, so he wanted me to bunt a lot, and so I really worked at it. But when you get the sacrifice, a lot of times, believe it or not, it's immediate pressure because now that you have to get this job done, and if you don't, they're going to be pissed off at you, right? It'd been easier for me to hit a weak ground ball to second a lot of times than bunting off a guy throwing 95-mile-an-hour fastballs. Okay, and so
Right.
what you do, what I did was I would survey the defense first and third, see if the first baseman's charging, I'm not going to push a bunt to the first baseman right to him and potentially bunt into a double play. So, and I was actually better at the drag bunt. So a lot of times in a sacrifice situation, I would ask the manager beforehand, is it okay if you give me the bunt if I try and do a drag bunt, because I could get that down. And sometimes I'd make such a good bunt that I'd get a hit and move the runner over. But for me, you look for a pitch down in the strike zone. A lot of times if they see you sacrificing, they're going to throw a high fastball, and you see guys, it's hard to get on top of that ball. So a lot of times you'll pop it up or bunt it too hard right back at the pitcher, and you don't complete the sacrifice. So I would look at a pitch down and try and make sure I got the right angle on the bat and the barrel on top of the baseball. So the first thing it did was go on a downward action into the ground and try and kill it, because and it makes it even harder to bunt when they know you're bunting too. I mean, you got guys charging in, you're in the batter's box, the pitcher's coming at you, the first baseman and third baseman are charging, you can see them even though you're looking at the pitch, and now you got to focus on this 95-mile-an-hour fastball. So it really is difficult to do, and now I know we don't see much of that in the game at all, bunting at all.
So I'm going to take you to a day where you didn't bunt at all. We're going to 2001. You become the second player in Toronto Blue Jays history to hit for the cycle. What a special day for you and for Toronto. What happened for you that day? What was going right?
Well, I didn't even expect to be in the lineup, to be honest with you. I told you earlier, Scott, I didn't have a very good year in 2001, and I was playing sporadically. And I knew that we were playing the Rangers, and that Darren Oliver, my old teammate, I ended up being his agent for 9 years when I retired. I knew he was pitching. I knew I had success in the past against Darren. So I show up and I'm playing third base and leading off. I think I was hitting 9-hole. And so, first at bat, like I told you, I couldn't keep my weight back because of my knee injury. And I kind of hit a blooper to right. Leday plays it into a triple. And then I out front again, hit one over Leday's head. He misjudges it. Then I had a homer off Mahomes. And now it's like I need a single, which I've hit more singles than any other hit in my life. And now I don't know what to do, because we're winning 11-3, I think it is, and the game's pretty much decided. It's bottom of the 8th inning, and I went up to Cito Gaston and sat next to him, and I was very close with Cito. We played golf all the time, me and him and Gary Matthews, and I love the guy. And I said, Cito, what do I do here if I hit one in the corner or in the gap? And he goes, stop it first. I said, really? Stop it first and tell him I told you to. I said, okay. So then I went up to hit, and I was nervous, man. I had cotton mouth, and I was like, geez, I need a single for the cycle. Sure enough, I hit a line drive over the second baseman's head, Michael Young, and it goes to the wall. And I'm like, oh, shit. And so now I'm rounding first, and I'm screaming at Garth Orge, who's the first base coach. I'm screaming, what do I do? What do I do? And he screams, stay here, stay here, screaming. So I take a huge turn and go back to first, and then it's like standing ovation. Kelly Gruber's there in town, just so happened to be there. And, it was really neat. It was really neat. But then I got so much flack after that. I still get flack to this day from people on social media saying, yeah, you tell everybody to play the game the right way, but you stopped on that one time. It's like, yeah, the one time in my entire career I was selfish, and I even have the permission of Cito Gaston, who was Hank Aaron's roommate, right? He won 2 World Series and 4 pennants as manager, and he told me to stop, and it's still not good enough with people. They still want to criticize me, but I don't really care. I mean, it's, I have a piece of Blue Jay history, and it was a pretty cool experience.
No doubt, that's pretty cool. And I can picture Cito saying that, just stay there. Question about I run a museum, obviously a baseball museum, so I'm always interested to see what the players, did you collect when you were a player? Did you keep some prized possession? Did you go up to other players and ask them for autographs? Like, do you have you have a man cave in your basement where you have the coolest thing ever from your career, from someone else's career?
I got a lot of autographs. I didn't really go up to guys. I would like send some baseballs and stuff. I'd give them to the bat boy and say, "Hey, will you go get Paul Mulder and Tony Fernandez and Joe Carter's autograph?" And he would go over. And normally, 99% of the time, he'd come back with those autographs, and occasionally he'd say, "So and so is not going to sign." So it's like, all right, whatever. I didn't want his autograph anyway. But I do have a lot of stuff from over the years, a lot of jerseys. Most of my stuff, I still have a lot of my jerseys from when I played. I kept them after the year. But a lot of the stuff that I accumulated over the years, I ended up giving away to people. I have one glove left with my name on it that I used, and it looks really bad. My son's lost the other ones, but I do have some pretty cool jerseys and bats and stuff like that. It's all back in Texas though.
It's cool. You got to keep that stuff. It's pretty cool to have it from your career. So.
Oh yeah, I have autographed, personalized to me, Cal Ripken frame jersey, which is probably one of my most prized possessions.
Well, Jeff, you were in your rookie season with the Texas Rangers in August of 1992 when they pulled off the surprising trade of Ruben Sierra, Bobby Witt, Jeff Russell in exchange for Oakland A's slugger Jose Canseco. So what were your initial thoughts about that trade, and what was the mood like in the Rangers clubhouse?
Man, we were pissed. We were pissed. We all Ruben was the heart and soul of the team. Bobby Witt, everybody loved Bobby Witt. Jeff Russell was hilarious. And we were pissed, I'll be honest, because those guys were three of the favorite guys in the clubhouse. But, we got Jose, and Jose showed up, and we loved Jose. Jose, I think, got a bad rap. Most people don't know Jose. I played with him in Texas and Boston, and he's one of my favorite teammates that I've ever had. He was so funny, and he was just always cutting up, and we just made fun of him all the time. Billy Ripken used to make fun of him because he's always doing this stuff with his head, and he called him shaky. And he actually is a really good guy. I'm still friends with him. I texted him actually yesterday. But we knew that he was, a stud, a star. And, getting somebody like that, Ruben was maybe slowing down a little bit, and we got Jose right when he was still one of the best players in the game. But it always hurts when you lose, when you trade away some of your favorite guys on the team.
So I'll get you out of here with this, and I guess it's an opinion-based question for you here, but what position were you most comfortable with? Because you did play all around, and how did you know what glove to bring every day? It's not like you show up with a first baseman's mitt if you're not a first baseman.
Yeah, well, second base was my where I was most comfortable. I played shortstop growing up, but like I told you earlier that I didn't have a very strong arm, maybe an average arm at best, and it took a lot of work just to get there. But second base, I felt the most comfortable, and really didn't start playing all over the field until I was injured in '98 in spring training and came back, and the Red Sox signed Jose Offerman to a 4-year deal. And Jimmy Williams wanted to get me in the lineup, but he had to play Jose at second. So he started asking me if I could play other positions. And a lot of those positions I'd never played. And he's like, "Can you play outfield, Frito?" I was like, "Yeah, Jimmy, of course I can." And I was like, "Who's got an outfield glove?" And then one time he goes, "Frito, can you play first?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, Jimmy." He goes, "All right, you're in there. Mo's hurt." I was like, "All right." And I turned around the dugout. I said, "Has anybody got a first baseman's glove I could borrow?" So Mike Stanley gave me his glove. So I had like a second baseman, middle infield, second base shortstop glove was my 11 1/4 inch. At third base, which I was a terrible third baseman, I hated third base, I used an outfielder's glove. I was like, if I catch it, I might be able to throw him out. And then when the outfield, I basically had 3 gloves and just try to use those gloves no matter where they put me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeff, so much for joining us today. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Nice to meet you guys.
I remind everybody, hit that like, subscribe, notification button. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see everyone next time. Have a great night.